All right, so you're with us again for another deep dive.
Yeah.
And this time around, we're going to excavate some fascinating stuff from a couple resources you shared with us.
Yeah.
A beginner's guide to precious metals,
Okay.
and then a piece from Money called Investing in Precious Metals, a beginner's guide to precious metals.
Right.
So a couple of beginner's guides to precious metals.
Ah.
We're going to try to, unearth the key knowledge without
Right.
getting lost in the weeds.
Exactly. I think, there's a lot of information out there, right? It can be a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
So we're going to just try to give you the express lane to understanding the essentials here.
Right. We'll pan through it, we'll sift through it, and we'll get to the good stuff.
Exactly.
The nuggets, as it were.
Yeah, yeah. We're going to focus on the four main metals that your source has highlighted.
Okay.
Gold, silver, platinum, and palladium. And these are all, metals that have been coveted for centuries. Even ancient civilizations were really into these things.
Right.
So there's a reason, and we're going to figure out why.
Okay, well, let's dig in. Let's start with gold. It's called the granddaddy of precious metals.
It is.
There's some good reasons for that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
It's incredibly durable. It doesn't rust or corrode. It's very malleable. You can bend it into all sorts of shapes, which makes it good for jewelry, I would imagine. And it's a great conductor of electricity
Yeah.
and heat.
And those characteristics, really contribute to its value. So, gold does have some industrial uses,
Right.
things like dentistry, electronics, that kind of thing. But its primary significance really is jewelry and just a form of money, a way to store wealth.
And the way we value gold seems very unique. I mean, it's traded constantly. Its price goes up and down, up and down.
Right.
And it's more based on how people feel rather than just like supply and demand.
Yeah.
Why is that?
That's a good point. The amount of gold that's already been mined
Right.
and is currently just sitting, in vaults
Right.
far exceeds the amount of new gold that's being mined. So it's all about how much those holding significant amounts of gold
Right.
are willing to buy or sell. That sentiment is
Right.
really what drives the price.
So it's like
It's all about the sentiment.
the people who are already holding the largest amounts of gold are the ones who are really dictating the price.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
The big players.
Yeah. Wow. It's like a high stakes waiting game.
Kind of, yeah.
And our sources point out some specific worries that make people want to hoard gold.
Right.
One is, concerns about the stability of banks.
Yeah.
Or, political uncertainty.
Throughout history, gold has been seen as this safe haven, right?
Yeah.
When times get tough financially, politically, people turn to gold. It's tangible.
Yeah.
You can hold it.
You can hold it in your hand.
Yeah.
Right?
Other forms of wealth feel less secure.
Okay. And then there's inflation.
Right.
If you're not seeing good returns in traditional investments,
Right.
stocks or bonds,
Mm-hmm.
gold starts to look a little better.
Yeah.
At least as a way to keep your wealth from eroding.
And if you think about it, what economists call the real rate of return, the return on your investments after accounting for inflation.
Right.
So if inflation is high
Right.
and your investments aren't keeping pace, your real return could actually be negative.
Right.
So in that scenario, things like gold
Oh.
actually become more attractive.
Okay. All right. And then there are just major global crises, like wars and political upheavals.
Right.
I mean, I would imagine that just sends people running to gold
Absolutely.
because it's easy to move.
Easy to move,
And you can trade it for essentials if you need to.
universally recognized.
Right.
So if you need to get food,
Yeah.
shelter, get out of a situation,
Right.
gold is what you want.
Now, this fact really stood out to me.
Mm-hmm.
The United States holds the world's largest gold reserves, a massive 8,133.5 tons as of August 2024.
Wow.
That's a lot of gold.
That's a lot of shiny stuff.
Yeah.
It really emphasizes how important it is.
Right.
Even today
Right.
in the global financial system.
Yeah. And speaking of prices, both our guides mentioned that gold hit an all-time high in October 2024.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the key factors that fueled that surge?
Well, I think it really highlights how everything's kind of interconnected, right?
Yeah.
So the Federal Reserve cut interest rates,
Okay.
and there was an expectation of further cuts. You had geopolitical conflicts around the world.
Yeah.
And then you also have, believe it or not, central banks themselves
Right.
actively buying up gold. All of that together led to that record high.
Okay, so if somebody's thinking, okay, gold sounds like something I should look into,
Mm-hmm.
What are the ways you can actually invest in gold?
Well, you can go straight to the source and buy physical gold,
Yep.
coins or bars, things like that.
Okay.
You can also look at mining stocks,
Okay.
so shares in the companies that actually extract the gold from the earth.
Got it.
And then there are ETFs, exchange-traded funds,
Right.
that track the price of gold. That's a popular option.
Okay.
And then for the more seasoned investor, there are futures contracts,
Okay.
which are agreements to buy or sell gold
Got it.
at a specific price in the future. And then finally, you can hold gold in a specialized retirement account called a gold IRA.
Wow. Okay, so there's several ways to skin that cat.
There are.
All right. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about silver.
Okay.
Our sources suggest it's a bit of a different animal than gold, right?
Is it?
I mean, it's not just a store of value.
Right.
It has a big role as an industrial metal.
Mm-hmm.
So its price can be a little more volatile, right?
Exactly. And that's a key difference.
Okay.
So, silver, it has this kind of dual identity.
Yeah.
People invest in it.
Right.
But it's also a vital industrial commodity.
Okay.
So that means its price is influenced by a lot more factors,
Yeah.
and it tends to swing more than gold.
Okay. And the industrial demand for silver seems like it's really tied to technological advancements and economic shifts.
Right.
I mean, like our sources point out, the decline of silver in photography, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
When digital cameras came along, that really changed the landscape.
Really shows you how fast things can change, right?
Yeah.
Technological progress,
Yeah.
it can really reshape things quickly.
Right. But then on the other hand, emerging economies,
Right.
there's a huge demand for silver in electronics and medical devices.
Exactly. So that's the flip side. As those economies grew, the demand for these products,
Right.
consumer electronics, medical equipment, all sorts of things,
Right.
where silver is really important, that demand just skyrocketed.
Right. And it's not stopping there, right? I mean, our sources point to new uses for silver in things like batteries and superconductors.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere. The research continues. There's
Yeah.
new ways to utilize silver, and it's going to remain relevant.
So unlike gold, its price isn't just about fashion or being a safe haven.
Right.
It's got these practical real-world applications.
Exactly. It's got its hands in a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's a busy metal.
Yeah. And just like gold, silver hit an all-time high in October 2024.
It did.
So those same forces that were pushing gold up.
Yeah, a lot of those broader economic and geopolitical factors were at play there too.
Right, right. I thought it was interesting that a source pointed out that silver's lower price point
Yeah.
might make it more appealing to new investors
Mhm.
because it's, I don't know, it just feels more accessible.
Right.
And it's used in so many everyday things.
It is, and it's got a lower barrier to entry, right?
Yeah.
Cost-wise compared to gold.
Right, right. Batteries, appliances, solar panels, even medicine, all this stuff.
Exactly.
And the ways to invest in silver seem very similar to gold. Physical silver, mining stocks, ETFs,
Right.
futures, and precious metals IRAs.
They pretty much mirror those options for gold.
Okay. All right, let's move on to platinum. Our sources highlight that platinum often commands a higher price than gold.
Yeah.
Why is that? It's because it's even rarer.
Rarity. That
Yeah.
fundamental scarcity is a big reason why in stable markets, platinum often trades at a premium to gold.
Right.
Just less of it is mined every year.
Right. Less supply.
Yeah.
Okay, and the price of platinum seems very tied to industrial uses, particularly catalytic converters.
Yeah, it's a big one.
In automobiles.
The automotive industry's demand for platinum in catalytic converters is huge. I mean, it's essential for reducing emissions. That's the biggest factor driving its price.
Okay.
Jewelry is another big one.
Okay.
And then it's also used in petroleum and chemical refining
Okay.
and in the computer industry.
Okay. And because the mining of platinum is concentrated in just a couple of countries, primarily South Africa and Russia,
Right.
geopolitical events can really cause price fluctuations.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a big geopolitical risk associated with platinum supply
Okay.
because of that concentration.
Right.
You have political instability, labor disputes, changes in government policy. All of that can disrupt the supply chain.
And, our sources bring up a good example of this. The COVID-19 pandemic disrupted car production.
Yeah.
That, of course, lowered demand for auto catalysts, pushing platinum prices down.
Right.
But then as demand rebounded
Yeah.
and supply chains had issues,
Right.
there was a price increase in early 2021.
Exactly.
So very volatile.
It shows how global events can really cascade, right, through the supply and demand dynamics and really impact the prices.
And then there's this interesting wrinkle, right?
Yeah.
Where palladium can sometimes be used as a substitute for platinum
Right.
in auto catalysts,
Mm-hmm.
which could put upward pressure on platinum prices,
Right.
depending on demand for cleaner vehicles.
It's an interesting dynamic. As we transition globally towards lower zero-emission vehicles,
Yeah.
the demand for both platinum and palladium in catalytic converters,
Yeah.
it's all going to be tied together.
Right. It sounds like all of that really contributes to making platinum the most volatile
Mm-hmm.
of the precious metals we're discussing today.
As an investor, you have to be aware that platinum's price is really influenced by a lot of things.
Yeah.
Industrial demand, geopolitical factors, and that possibility of material substitution. All that contributes to its volatility.
Right. And just like the other metals, you can invest in platinum through physical metal, mining stocks, ETFs, futures, and precious metals IRAs.
All the usual suspects.
All the same options.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Finally, let's explore palladium. Our sources describe it as being less widely known,
Yeah,
but it still has significant industrial applications.
it does.
Electronics, various industrial products, and some surprising things like applications in dentistry and medicine.
Yeah, it's kind of the unsung hero, right?
Yeah.
It may not have the name recognition of gold or silver,
Right.
but it's still a workhorse.
Mhm.
Those unique catalytic properties
Are very important in a lot of industries.
Right. And it's mined in a pretty diverse set of locations.
It is.
The U.S., Russia, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Canada, Australia, and Finland.
So a little bit more geographically diverse than platinum, which offers a little bit more supply security,
Right.
but those couple regions still the main producers.
Right. I was surprised to learn that palladium's been used in jewelry as far back as 1939 to create a stronger white gold.
Mm-hmm.
And even more surprising, Tonga had circulating palladium coins in 1967.
Yeah, kind of interesting historical trivia. Shows you that it's been around and its value was recognized early on.
Yeah, they saw something there.
Yeah.
It's also malleable and it gets stronger when you work it,
Mm-hmm.
which makes it useful in thin sheets for things like solar energy and fuel cells.
Yeah, its malleability, the fact that it gets stronger when worked, make it really good for those more advanced technological applications.
Yeah. And its importance in clean energy technology.
Yeah.
It's going to continue to grow, I think.
But the real story with palladium, catalytic converters,
Yeah.
around 80% of the global supply goes into these devices because of those excellent catalytic properties.
That's the big driver of demand.
Right.
And ultimately the price.
Right. And here's a fast fact from our guide. South Africa was the second largest palladium producer in 2023 after Russia.
Again, those geopolitical hotspots
Yeah.
really playing a role in the supply.
And just like platinum, its price is market-driven.
Right.
It can be very sensitive to things like business cycles, geopolitical events, and environmental regulations. The price spiked during Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022.
Yeah, that was a big one. Really showed you how palladium is vulnerable to that geopolitical instability.
Yeah, supply disruption,
Yeah, and the market reactions can be pretty swift.
Right. And the investment options for palladium are, as you might expect, physical palladium, mining stocks, ETFs, futures, and precious metal IRAs.
Same range of choices as the other precious metals. You can pick what suits your style.
Okay. All right, we've covered the big four precious metals.
We did.
Now let's talk about, how you can actually fill up your treasure chest, as one of our guides puts it.
Okay.
What are the main ways to invest in these metals?
Well, your sources outline some key investment vehicles.
Okay.
Commodity ETFs are a popular choice. It's a convenient way to track the price movements.
Okay.
You're not taking physical possession, but it's very liquid.
Okay.
And then, of course, you have the common stocks and mutual funds that invest in mining companies.
Okay.
Those can offer leveraged returns.
Okay.
But you got to understand the mining industry.
Yeah.
And then you have futures and options.
Right.
High liquidity,
Yep.
potential for significant gains with leverage, but they also come with more risk.
Right, right. And then, of course, there's just buying the physical bullion coins and bars.
Right. If you like to hold the real deal. Yeah.
But you need to think about storage, insurance costs,
Right.
and, maybe it's not as easy to sell quickly.
Right.
And then you have the certificates of ownership where it's
Right.
paper-based. You're not handling the physical metal.
Right.
But, as your source points out, in a true crisis,
Right.
how much is that paper really worth?
Right. Right. And then finally, there are the self-directed IRAs.
Yeah. Precious metals IRAs can be attractive if you're looking for long-term
Right.
retirement savings
Yeah.
and potential tax advantages.
Okay. So the big question for you, the listener, are precious metals a good investment for your portfolio? What are the potential advantages of including them?
Well, you know, they can act as a hedge against inflation.
Okay.
Their intrinsic value tends to hold up even when currencies are declining.
Oh.
They can also offer insurance against major crises,
Right.
financial, political, military, things like that. They often do well when other assets are struggling. And from a portfolio perspective, they tend to have a low or even negative correlation with other major asset classes,
Right.
like
Right.
stocks and bonds.
Right.
So when stocks and bonds are down,
Yeah.
precious metals might hold their value.
Mm-hmm.
They might even increase.
Exactly. And that's why that diversification benefit is so key.
Right.
It helps reduce the overall volatility and risk of your portfolio.
Right. So they can kind of smooth things out a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. That's the hope. They can offer that buffer during those downturns.
Right. Okay. And they tend to retain their value over the long term
Mm-hmm.
due to their scarcity.
Right.
We talked about their diverse industrial uses.
Mm-hmm.
They're tangible. You can hold them in your hand.
You can.
And for new investors, it doesn't necessarily require a huge amount of capital to get started.
All good points.
Yeah.
They definitely have their appeal.
Of course, we need to be realistics, right?
Yeah.
It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Right.
There are risks to consider
Absolutely.
when investing in precious metals.
All investments have risk. Precious metals, no exception.
Right.
Prices can decline based on market sentiment, supply and demand, geopolitical events.
Right.
A lot can happen.
But our guide points out that during those times of economic uncertainty,
Right.
when other assets might be struggling,
Mm-hmm.
precious metals can rise.
They can. That's that countercyclical behavior that they're known for.
Yeah.
It's a big reason why investors view them as a safe haven.
Right. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind. Precious metals, unlike stocks and bonds,
Right.
they don't generate any income.
Right.
They don't have any cash flow.
No dividends, no interest payments.
Right. And if you hold the physical metal, you have to factor in storage.
You do. Storage, insurance, all that.
Yeah.
It's a factor.
And also, platinum tends to be more prone to price swings.
It does. Yeah, those supply and demand characteristics really play a role in its volatility.
Right, right. Okay, so as you, the listener, are weighing all this,
Mm-hmm.
what are some key considerations before making any decisions about precious metals?
Well, you got to understand, prices are influenced by a lot of factors.
Right.
Scarcity, natural disasters, geopolitical events, market trends, even technological breakthroughs.
Right.
It's all part of the equation.
Right.
And of course, you need to understand your own investment goals
Right.
and risk tolerance. That's crucial for any investment,
Right.
but especially for precious metal.
And a lot of financial experts suggest starting with a relatively small allocation,
Yeah.
maybe 5% to 10%
Mm-hmm.
in your overall portfolio.
It's a good way to test the waters,
Yeah.
see how it goes
Right.
without taking on too much risk.
So to bring it all together, it seems like precious metals can be a valuable tool
Mm-hmm.
for diversifying your portfolio
Mm-hmm.
and potentially providing a hedge against certain economic uncertainties.
Mm-hmm.
But like with any investment, it's crucial to do your own research and understand the risks involved
Absolutely.
before making any decisions.
You got to know what you're getting into.
Right.
Each metal has its own personality, its own quirks.
Yeah.
Different investment methods have different pros and cons.
Right.
You got to find the right fit for you.
And on that note, here's a final thought for you to consider.
Okay.
Given the long history of these metals, the way they've held value over time,
Mm-hmm.
and considering how the global landscape is constantly changing,
Right.
what do you see as the most compelling reason for an individual investor to think about, including precious metals, in their long-term financial plan?
Mm-hmm.
And which specific metal
Mm-hmm.
and which investment approach
Mm-hmm.
might be the most suitable
Mm-hmm.
for your unique circumstances and your outlook?
Mm-hmm.
It's something to really chew on
Yeah.
as you continue on your investment journey.
It's a fascinating world
It
and one worth exploring.
It is. All right, well, I hope this was helpful and gave you some things to think about.
Me too.
And we'll catch you on the next deep dive.
Sounds good.
All right. Take care.
See ya.